Are you sure there are 2 L's in dollar, Gideon?
Yes.
And now there are 2 G's in bugger off.
A warm welcome to you all. Hope you'll thoroughly enjoy our programme.
Oh, hello.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Reel Britannia podcast, a very British podcast about very British movies with just a hint of professionalism. Good morning, Scott here. It's a very rare edition of Reel Britannia because it is just the two of us. Cue that music again at some point. Hello, mate.
Hello. Yes, it seems like there's a vacant seat in the room. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't actually get together as a couple, as it were, that often, do we now? It's
no, we don't. Not since the court order, no. We usually have to have a chaperone.
I enjoy all of our guests. The company of our guests is always something special. You know, we've got Anthony now quite regularly with us. Mark is always doing the Hammer horror stuff. But it's nice just to get back to a conversation between the two of us, and we've both, selected our own movies each time. And I don't know. I just enjoy these sometimes, going back to the old format.
It's for want of a better phrase, back to basics, and it is nice sometimes to be able to do that. But absolutely, the guests that we have on, particularly those two that you mentioned, are great, and it's always nice when Tony is available to join us as well.
Absolutely.
So, but no, it's nice to have just the two of us, and more so with the way that we pick our films when it's just the two of us. You leave it till the last possible minute before you decide what it is.
That's what I'm going to be doing at the end of this show, and talking to go back.
If people hear a coin flip, you'll know it's.
But your method of sort of selection is you consult this ever-growing list of yours. There's hundreds on this list, isn't there, of stuff that you want to bring to the table, basically?
There is, yes. It's not in the thousands, but it is in hundreds, yeah.
Yeah. Was there any particular reason you chose this one, or you just went down the list and thought, oh, I'd like to do that?
It was partially down to the fact that some of the other films that we've done recently, something that was of a different tone, I felt in some ways a bit of a palate cleanse. It's also something that I felt we were getting round to at some point anyway, and it was about time. There was nothing major impetus-wise with regards to anniversaries or somebody dying or any of those things that sometimes do motivate us. Although, to be fair, by the time we actually get the episode released, it's usually about a year after the person has died. So,
well, it is 1983, so we could quite safely say it's a 40th anniversary.
We could do, yeah.
If we get the episode out this year. Because, ladies and gentlemen, it is 1983. It is 2023 at the time of recording. When will this see the light of day? Who knows? We've given up trying to predict these things.
We're in July, and Merry Christmas.
It probably will be. That's the thing. Okay, it is 1983. It's Bill Forsyth. It's Local Hero. It's your choice.
There is a place where the northern lights transform the sky.
Anything out of the ordinary, you telephone me, night or day.
Modern mermaids spring from the sea.
What's the most amazing thing you ever found?
Impossible to say. See, there's something amazing every 2 or 3 weeks.
The land breathes with an ancient mystery.
Where are we?
And all who witness its wonders come to believe in its magic.
What about the sky?
Sky, sir, is amazing.
I wish you could see it. I wish I could describe it to you just like I'm seeing it.
This is the new film from the producer of Chariots of Fire, Local Hero.
Survey teams have found just about the only suitable bay on the entire coast.
I think we should get a negotiator on the side right away.
We're here on kind of a mission.
Same here.
I don't want to be coy with you, Gordon. We want to buy the whole place. We want to buy everything from the cliffs to the north, through to the bay on the far side. That's all.
Oh, boy. Are we going to be rich?
Peter Riegert, Burt Lancaster.
Take the chopper, go to Aberdeen, get on over to Houston.
I want to stay here. Run the hotel. Do little bits of business. You can go to Houston. Take the Porsche, the house, the job. It's a good life there, Gordon.
Local Hero. The story of an ordinary man who cared enough to do something extraordinary. Local Hero.
Okay, that's Local Hero, released, as I say, in 1983, directed and written by Bill Forsyth, starring Burt Lancaster, Peter Riegert, Fulton Mackay, Dennis Lawson, Peter Capaldi, and many other famous Scottish faces. As it's Stephen's selection, I'm expecting a synopsis that may have a little bit of alliteration in it somewhere along the line.
Possibly.
Possibly, yeah. Okay.
Americans' oil ambition for Celtic coast causes craze for cash, only to be obstructed by old man.
And I bet that took you seconds to come up with because you do these so often.
Well, being alliterative does tick a box for me. So yes, I was all right with that one, and that did tickle me.
Okay.
And actually, for once, it's a bit, it's actually a bit more descriptive of the plot. Sometimes it's too impenetrable, and you then have to actually read a different version.
Yeah, this one, no, I'm going with that. I'm not going to read the IMDb synopsis because that's exactly what goes on in this movie. I watched it very late night, and sitting there watching it, I realised I haven't watched it for 40 years. I've only watched it the once when it very first came out. Being a Bill Forsyth and sort of that era of filmmaking, like the Film 4 type era, Goldcrest Productions as this is, I bet you've watched this more than once.
I have, but when I sat down to watch it, I realised that I haven't watched it for more than 10 years.
Okay.
Probably closer to 12 or 15, to be fair. That meant I had a certain amount of distance from it, I think, and not a full recollection of what happened, and a slight mismemory around it as well, which is quite good, I think. So it was helpful. I have watched it probably 4, maybe 5 times in the past. Yes, it certainly isn't something I've watched recently, which was good. Certainly picking up on, what my remembrance of the plot was versus what the actual plot was in reality was certainly a difference.
My remembrance was that Burt Lancaster just appears at the end briefly. Although he is right towards the end, he sort of takes a bit of a lead in the last 10 minutes. And then I realised that I was getting mixed up with Field of Dreams, where he appears at the end of that, literally for seconds at the end, looking exactly the same. But you have this incredible knack of choosing a movie and saying, here we go, Scott, we're going to watch this. And I go, brilliant, I haven't seen that for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years in this case. And then going, why the bloody hell have I not watched this for 40 years? This is one of those movies that I should be watching every couple of years quite regularly. And I don't, because I've got nothing against this film whatsoever. I enjoyed it first time round, and I bloody enjoyed it this time. And it is just one of those, we'll probably go into this, it's almost like a fairy tale. It's one of those little whimsical, gentle comedies that we seem to pick up on quite often on the show.
Yeah, it is that whimsy, that gentle, as you say, almost fairy tale. That there has been references in various reviews of this in the past to things like Brigadoon and stuff, but it's not as mystical in that way with that. No. But there is a separation, and I know that there could possibly be some criticism from people in Scotland that they're trying to, this is portraying Scotland as being stuck in the past and being, not modern, and the people are strange compared to those in the modern world. But in this sense, you go to the fringes, and this is set on the fringes of Scotland. There is a still I think a certain amount of holding on to old ways and people being a community. And this is what this is about, really, about a different way of life. I think there's a renewed perspective on that based upon the essential message behind this, which is, about, not throwing away what you've got and the environment and all those kind of things, which is why this has been described as being the favourite film of Al Gore.
I read that, yeah.
At the time, we maybe didn't have the same view of like environmentalism and stuff, and this is very much more about the characters than it is about that, really. But that as a background to and a catalyst for the sort of exposure of the characters, I think it just has a different resonance now than it did back then.
What I liked about this is that they don't over exaggerate the fact that this is an isolated Scottish community, because if this was any other film, it would have been, we don't like strangers here, and the visitors would have been treated with suspicion, but they're welcomed with open arms because of the greed, basically, of some of the residents of this community, and the fact that there's a lot of money involved in this whole transaction.
Yeah, and it's a twist in many ways. You would expect a plot that is the basic idea of being that there's oil company wanting to come in and buy an entire coast to develop it for the mineral rights and exploration of that. You'd expect it to be a contest between the locals who want to stave this off. I mean, there's other films like that. I'm trying to think of the name of it. There's one of them. The lead character, he has it has one plot of land and all the rest of it they buy around him, and he's a sheep farmer that just has this. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I think I know. Yeah,
similar era from the 80s, and that's a sort of the little guys against the big company, and the pastoral way of life against the big conglomerate wanting to rape the countryside. Whereas this is a twist on it, because it very quickly transpires that the locals are more keen on this than the bloke who's there to sell it.
That they will do anything in their power to make this work, even recruiting, a visiting Russian fisherman who visits their shores quite regularly armed with bottles of vodka. And he gets involved because the crux of this whole plot is that the coastline is due to be sold to this oil company. The plans are going ahead, but it turns out that it's about a 4-mile stretch of the beach, isn't it? I think they say belongs to Fulton Mackay, going back 400 years or so in his family, and the documents to prove it are in a museum.
So a lot of the Isles bequeathed it because one of his ancestors killed somebody for the Lord of the Isles. So, which does expose, how the landed gentry, and obviously he's not landed gentry because he lives in a shack that doesn't even have a door. It does, that is how virtually all the landed gentry ended up in having their titles and their lands. It's because they went and did some bad deed for the monarch at the time. But yes, so it is that there's this one stretch which is the sticking point that sets the plans, unfortunately, for everybody that wants to sell.
What I liked about Fulton Mackay's character as well is, as I said, in any other movie, they could have really over-exaggerated the fact that he would have been a crazy hermit living on the beach. But it's done in such a genteel way that you just think, Fulton Mackay, you're a legend. This is brilliant, the way he comes across. And it's just like, but this is my beach. Why would I want to go anywhere else? Well, look, I'll buy you a beach in Australia. I can't make a living there, and his living is just picking up the flotsam and the jetsam that comes onto the shore. Because you've had
what's the best thing that you've ever, what's the greatest thing you've ever thought? Oh, it's difficult to say because the greatest thing washes up every 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was a box of oranges, wasn't it, this week apparently?
Yeah, South African ones.
And he's quite content.
As you say, though, he's in a different film he'd be a sort of grouchy sort of. Firing shotguns at him to get rid of him off his land, but he's very welcoming and friendly and basically wins them over rather than anything else, just by, and not deliberately, he's just been in himself and just being friendly, like the rest of them are all friendly, and it just ends up, I can say turn the tide, but that would be too bad. But it just ends up being that way, and because the head of the oil conglomerate is equally mad or even more mad in a sense, it ends up being that there's a meeting of mad minds, really. The only bit that's kind of I would take issue with is I don't see how it worked, and I don't know whether there was something taken out of the script or something. But the thing of Burt Lancaster's character, this guy who he's employing to insult him, I really don't get how that, I suppose it's meant to be comedic, but it feels a bit disjointed compared to the rest. It feels like it's taking time away that you could have been spending more time with the characters in the actual village in Scotland.
Yeah, we've had experience of Bill Forsyth's genius before with Gregory's Girl, and we said then, the charm of that movie is the characters and the way they're portrayed, and some of the little quirks, especially in Gregory's Girl, of things that are going on in the background. We had a thing going on in the background here, just the motorcyclists going up and down through the village, just randomly. That's never resolved. Which,
I was half expecting there to be a bloke sat on the back of the motorbike in a wheelhouse. Because this precedes Restless Natives, but certainly it's a similar kind of motorbike for a start off, and the way they ride it around is similar. It just sends an echo, and you think, was there some inspiration from this taken?
Could be, like led into it.
So there would have been more time with that quirks, because you've got that motorbike going around, same as you've got in Gregory's Girl. You've got wandering around in the background.
Nuns, isn't it? Or
Penguin.
A penguin at the school. That's it. What's the one with the nuns? There was one with a nun.
The Exorcist. No.
Hello, Scott and Stephen. This is Morris Brzezinski sending a message to you at the Reel Britannia podcast in advance of you recording your episode about the film Local Hero. Although, mind you, as I say this, I know you've actually already recorded it, but I don't think that Scott has edited it. So I'm sending you this feedback so you can stick it in the podcast or Where the Sun Don't Shine or wherever you want to do with it. Local Hero, huge favourite film of mine. I saw the film when it first came out in the cinema. I'd been to see Dire Straits, I think on 1984 or thereabouts, when they were touring around supporting their album Love Over Gold. And for the final encore of the night, just as the crew were actually pulling the set down, the band played the theme from Local Hero. And the film hadn't come out yet. We didn't know what this was. But they had a program that you could buy for the concert, which is an unusual thing. I didn't sort of think that even by the 80s, that they were selling programs for rock concerts just for the theatre. Anyway, there was a full-page ad in the program about this upcoming film Local Hero with music by Mark Knopfler. So I thought, oh, that sounds pretty interesting. And I don't remember whether Knopfler actually announced this is the theme from a new film coming out or not. But regardless, this instrumental piece has certainly been a favourite piece of music of mine for many years, ever since hearing it at that concert. And I've played the soundtrack to Local Hero more times than I can recall, really. I've watched the film maybe a couple of times in the last 12 to 18 months or something like that as well, because the Projection Booth podcast had done an episode in dedication to it, and I don't think Mike White had actually seen the film before his guests had actually suggested it to him. And one of his guests was Jonathan Melville, who wrote a fascinating book about the making of the film. The name of the book actually eludes me, but Jonathan Melville was the author and he appeared on the projection booth to talk about it. So I went out and bought a copy of the book, and yeah, absolutely fascinating. Learned some interesting things about not just the making of the film, but you get some great Burt Lancaster stories. Really, just to have something pinpointed specifically about how he was on the set of this film, as opposed to the wider story of his life, which is also interesting. But it was just lovely to get those little things about him on the set of Local Hero. I'm rambling on, really not sure what I wanted to say. I just wanted to get my 2 cents worth in, as I knew that you were going to be talking about this film. In general, I've been a long-time fan of Bill Forsyth. Before Local Hero, I'd been a huge fan of Gregory's Girl. I always saw myself as a bit of a Gregory. I love the film that he made before Gregory's Girl called That Sinking Feeling. Bill Forsyth really just had a knack for making these beautiful little slices of life, which I'm sure is something that you gents have discussed. I also rewatched his mid-80s film Comfort and Joy, which came out maybe, 2-3 years, I can't remember, after Local Hero. And that was a film at the time that I was a little bit disappointed by, but I rewatched it, as I said, in the last 12 months or so, and was wondering what it was that I didn't enjoy about it the first time. Maybe I was expecting something as quirky as Local Hero, and in its way, Comfort and Joy sort of was, but I didn't appreciate it at the time. But certainly now, having rewatched it, I really love that one. I haven't seen Housekeeping, which I think might have been an American film that he made. I did see his, I guess you want to call it, sequel to Gregory's Girl called Gregory's Two Girls. Really, it's horrific. It's terrible. Look, let's be frank, it's a piece of shit. If you're listening to this, Bill Forsyth, and really you should be listening to Reel Britannia, but if you are, I'm sorry, I hope you realise that Gregory's Two Girls is not a worthy sequel to the original. Anyway, enough of that. Just wanted to say that I'm really looking forward to hearing what you gents have to say about Local Hero. It's just one of my favourite films. It's one of those films that I put on to make myself feel good. You can't watch that and not feel happy afterwards. Just a lovely, lovely story. It ends, I guess, sort of in a maybe slightly, I don't know, how would you put it? Maybe not quite melancholy tone, but things don't end up how you expect them. But anyway, I'll be interested to hear what your thoughts are. I look forward to being on Reel Britannia sometime later this year. It's only taken about 6 years from the time I made a suggestion for a film to do on Reel Britannia with you, Scott, that we've gotten around to working out a time to actually do it. So looking forward to speaking to you, gents, at some time in the not too distant future. All right, all the best. Cheers.
£500,000 is a lot of money, Ben. Even enough to buy another beach with. Look, I've got some postcards. I've got some very fine beaches here. I want to make you an offer. How about this? Any beach that takes your fancy, anywhere in the world, I'll get for you. Look at this. Hawaii. I can get you 5 or 6 miles of Hawaii, no problem. Or, look here, Australia. Look at that sand.
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, they look like very nice beaches, Mr. MacIntyre, but... See, I only need the one. I have this here. I don't need another one. Besides, I'm not sure that there's a living in any of these beaches. I mean, you've got to go into that kind of thing in detail.
I'll buy you any beach you want. And I'll give you £750,000 to set yourself up with. It'll give you some security in the early stages.
Yeah,
what do you say?
You're great at talking with the big numbers, Mr. MacIntyre. See, look, you're good at numbers, eh?
Yeah, part of my job, yes.
Right. Would you give me a £1 note for every grain of sand I hold in my hand? Now, you can have the beach for that. There, saved you £1 or £2, eh?
Come on, Ben, I don't want to play games. Let's negotiate in a business-like way.
Oh, dear. I mean, you could have had a very nice purchase there, Mr. MacIntyre. I can't hold much more than 10,000 grains of sand in my hand at a time. Did you think it would be a bigger number?
Took advantage of me, Ben.
Did I?
How about a hatful of sand?
No. I mean, that wouldn't be businesslike.
He has this trick, he does. with sand, sir. So if he offers you anything to do with sand, say yes, and we'll get him to sign something right away.
Did you say sand?
Yeah, yes, sir. Anything up to a half a bucket full. Say yes.
He wants to sell me the sand?
No, sir. You get the drift if he doesn't.
You said about Burt Lancaster as well. I think what may have happened, I read somewhere Burt Lancaster demanded his $2 million fee.
Yeah.
For this, which was over half the budget, but because they'd expressed an interest in Burt Lancaster, I think Warner Brothers put up a lot of money to Goldcrest, and that made it achievable. So can you imagine if you've got Burt Lancaster on board, you've actually got to write something around Burt Lancaster to get your $2 million worth out of it. So, you know, rather than a cameo, he does appear at certain points throughout the film. You know, it would have been ideal if it was like, say, he was this faceless head of the corporation that you don't see, and then all of a sudden he flies into Scotland in the helicopter. Oh my God, it's Burt Lancaster, you know.
Yeah.
But I think what Forsyth has done, he's developed this backstory that you've got this crazy eccentric billionaire that wants a comet named after him and is obsessed with the skies, you know, because he's got Peter Riegert checking out for comets and, you know, the Northern Lights, and that's a great scene, Northern Lights scene,
Yeah.
describing the Scottish sky, and that's pretty much when Peter Riegert falls in love with that whole place and offers to swap his life with Dennis Lawson, you know. And I think
swap
that
his life and swap his wife.
His wife, everything. You just take it all, he says. You know, the car's
wife as well, doesn't he? Though, yeah.
and I think that the Burt Lancaster thing may have been like an extended cameo because he cost them a lot of money.
It could have been just making use of him while they had him, and to do something that didn't mean rewriting the rest of the plot, since there was, you know, how much interaction he could have via a payphone on a quayside with the rest of the villagers, I suppose. I mean, they could have maybe had him that, you know, he rang up and he couldn't get hold of his agent, and therefore he randomly had a conversation with, you know, various locals.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah.
Conversation. Not sure how much that would have worked, because apparently when he was on set in Scotland, apparently he made a comment to Peter Capaldi. You know, saying that he, you know, what a great acting talent he was. But the only thing is, he couldn't understand a word he was saying. So.
See, I don't think that is an issue in this movie. Sometimes when we review things like we've reviewed some Irish movies or we've reviewed some Scottish movies previous, and sometimes they are very Scottish. But that
sometimes
adds
very Cockney as well. Sometimes
we've had some very Cockney movies as well, absolutely. And it doesn't matter. It's the whole point of the movie. But with this particular one, I don't think there was any real sort of like accents that made it difficult to understand what was going on, particularly for us. You know, it might have been for Burt Lancaster's, but certainly wasn't.
No, I had more difficulty in Villain trying to have Richard Burton's accent.
What in Villain?
Me,
yeah.
Then I did any of these, and is Jenny Seagrove, isn't it?
That was a bad accent, by the way. Yeah, that was
Scots
a bad
accent there.
Yeah.
But again, part of me possibly feels like she could have maybe had a stronger involvement, but because they weren't playing up this adversarial bit about the environment versus the conglomerate, and her being an activist in favour of the environment, even though she was employed by the company, I think that would have changed the plot a lot. And the direction of it if she'd have had a more active role, unfortunately. But it does mean it's a very male-centric storyline, really.
Yeah.
There's only really 4 women I can think of really in it, and none of them have a major role. So,
most of them don't even have a line to say.
Yeah.
You know, because there's a few in the church, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
There's Jenny Seagrove, the woman who's basically portrayed like a mermaid because she's got webbed feet. Swimming around. There's the wife of the publican accountant, etc., that he has 12 different jobs. Taxi driver as well. And then there's the punk girl, John Gordon Sinclair's girlfriend. But she's there doing the Kaylee and doing all, you know, she's full on punk, wandering around in this community, and you know, nobody bats an eyelid. It's just like, oh, she's still one of us. She's just, you know, that is quite indicative, I think, of the community as well, which is endearing.
It's typical Bill Forsyth as well, mate, just throwing in something like that visually you think, hang on a minute, that doesn't fit there, that shouldn't be there, but it's just the norm, you know, it's accepted.
Exactly, you know? Yeah. And then there's the woman she's an older woman, but she's the girlfriend of the Soviet boatman. who is there on the quayside longing for him coming every time. But it's strange, as you say, that he is the part of the catalyst for trying to influence the deal and being pro-capitalism when he's a Soviet naval captain.
Yeah,
comes ashore to check his stocks and shares.
It's just amazing, isn't it? Yeah, because you forget this is 1983 and relations with the Soviet Union, as it was the Soviet Union still then, and you forget about the Cold War going back. It's that would have been funny at the time because that wouldn't have happened, and sort of like the black market sort of skullduggery going on as well, and him bringing over the vodka. But now, in a world where I live here, literally 3 doors down, there's a Russian family, and it's probably the same where you are, mate. It's part and parcel of our culture now that we have Eastern Europeans and Russians living side by side with us.
Yeah.
Back then, it wouldn't have happened. There's no way we'd have had anything like that.
No, and it's as I say, the element where a communist been in, the person who's talking of capitalism, is the twist on it all. But it's certainly the thrust of it is that the locals were already in favour. Even the vicar doesn't seem completely adverse to selling off his church, but not as a going concern. Selling. So, and it was nice to see him who playing the vicar who has previously been in Desmond's.
Exactly, because I thought that's the Nigerian guy. Is it Adrian or someone? I think he's called.
Yeah.
I've just watched the first 2 seasons of Desmond's again and absolutely loving it. And again, an anomaly. You would not expect to see a Nigerian priest in the middle of the Scottish Highlands, but again, Bill Forsyth puts him in there and it works.
As it gets said to him, he says, "Oh, I'm here on a kind of mission." And he says, "Yeah, me too." He says, "Oh, but I think I'm stuck here now." He says, "Yeah, me too."
Exactly. It just worked around it. It's so funny. I'm going to suggest, as we're talking about the cast, that we grab our keys and we go up to our own little village hall. We didn't see a village hall; they was all gathered in the church here, but we've got our own village hall. It's the village hall.
They had the village dance, the Ceilidh, didn't they? And didn't they?
There we go. Is that a village hall? We'll go there then.
Yeah.
Let's go off to our village hall. Okay, the Village Hall of Fame, where anybody that has appeared more than 3 times on the show gets inducted. We've mentioned a few names already in passing, Stephen, because we've already mentioned Bill Forsyth in relation to Gregory's Girl and, other movies and John Gordon Sinclair. So I know there's some names that are going to be mentioned. Hopefully it's not too taxing compared to some previous ones for you. How did you get on?
Well, yeah, it certainly was a lot lighter than some of the ones where we've got 12 people who made their 17th appearance and etc. Yeah. And there's a cast of 160 and etc. This was, although there was a fair few people in there, though, as previously when we've reviewed Gregory's Girl, it's lots of people who are just locals who are drafted in.
Okay,
same as we had with Kez as well.
Can I ask, before you go through your list, I've got 2 questions. One, is there anybody that appeared in Night to Remember?
No.
Right. And
which
2,
I think is the first time in, I don't know, 80 episodes or something.
But it does happen in movies from the early 80s. We are still getting cast members from Night to Remember. That does happen because people like Desmond Llewellyn and people that were still alive, and they appeared in it. Second question, any of the top sort of 5 or 6, the ones we normally talk about, the Harringtons and the Chamberlain, I didn't spot any of them, but are we likely to expect an appearance from any of those?
No, there's none from the top 10 even. I would say this is pretty much an anomaly in that case.
Possibly because it was filmed on location and not down at Pinewood or Elstree or something like that, so it's going to be locals as extras or something like that. That's the only thing I can assume. So it's a real sort of novelty one, this one, for you then.
Yeah, I think you need to, there's certain films you go back to, Gregory's Girl being one of them, and also we had Kez, but there's also what was the one we did about the hunger as well. That was fairly limited cast, and so those kind of things are the ones where you don't get the frequent flyers or anything that you would expect. So we do have 5 people making their second appearances.
Okay, let's go for it.
John Gordon Sinclair, who is obviously in Gregory's Girl. If you didn't know that, then you don't know the man. Caroline Guthrie, which I think was the girl playing the punk. She was in Gregory's Girl as well. Bill Forsyth, I believe that he had something to do with Gregory's Girl as well. Fulton Mackay, he wasn't in Gregory's Girl. However, he was in Prize of Arms.
Really? Now that's a surprise, because we haven't done Porridge the movie yet.
We're not yet. No, we missed an opportunity for that. But we still can. We'll maybe do that with Booze at some point.
Yeah. So the only Fulton Mackay appearance was Prize of Arms from like the early '60s with Stanley Baker.
So far, yeah.
Okay.
So, and then the other person making their second appearance was Anne Scott Jones, who was in Restless Natives.
Which sort of is expected, okay.
Yeah. And then 2 people are making their third appearances, so getting their proper induction into the Hall of Fame, and not having to sit on the stoop wait to be let in. Dave Anderson, who was in Gregory's Girl and Restless Natives.
Wow, that's a great trio.
There's a running theme, isn't there? Yeah.
That's a great CV, yeah.
Yeah, well, the next one as well, Alex Norton.
Yeah, why do I know that?
Gregory's Girl again and Little Voice.
Ah, okay. Alex Norton.
He played Bunny, whatever, when Michael Caine was phoning up and getting the agent to come down. That was a big agent from London.
Yeah, he's also in Braveheart, and I think Scandal, which we haven't done yet. I'm sure he's in Scandal.
Yeah. He's been in quite a few things, to be honest. It's a little bit of a surprise what he hasn't already.
He's more sort of Scottish sitcoms, isn't he? I can't think of there's 2 big sitcoms that I don't watch, and everybody tells me I should be watching them. And it's got all those famous faces from things like Rhapsody Nesbitt.
Still Game and...
That's it.
I remember the other one, but Still Game and then,
Yeah, and it's, you look at the guys that are in that, and you think, oh, I know them from Rhapsody Nesbitt. That's my only touchstone. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's a few. There's a few people in this that were in Rhapsody Nesbitt or in Absolutely or whatever. But
I recognise the guy from Benidorm as well. I just started watching Benidorm, and there's the big Scottish guy that's a bit pompous. He's in the crowd in the church at one point, but sorry mate, carry on.
That's all right. And then we have 1 person making their 4th appearance. That's a guy you might not have heard of him. His name's David Putnam.
Oh, you're going that way, of course. Chariots of Fire, at least.
Chariots of Fire, That'll Be the Day, and Melody.
Oh, Melody, of course. So 4 for Mr. Putnam. Brilliant.
So yes, that's it. Burt Lancaster has not appeared in anything else previously, and I'm not sure he'll be appearing again. Possibly.
I'm just looking. I don't think there's many British movies that he appeared in. I don't think there's any.
He didn't, unfortunately. And despite the absolute pinpoint brilliant impersonations, we're not going to get some of the luminaries from the silver screen in America who were the guy in the pub was doing the impressions of.
That was brilliant. Wasn't that Jimmy Stewart? And literally
Jimmy Stewart. When he did Jimmy Stewart, I thought, buy me that could be Scott if I had my head.
But all he did was move his hat.
And it's that thing where he was pulling their face and he was going, who's this? And they were going, Jimmy Stewart. And he was going, no, it wasn't. And saying it was somebody else, and then doing it again, and then it was somebody else, and then he goes and does one, and he goes, who's that? And they go, oh, it's Cary Grant. And she goes, no, that was Jimmy Stewart. and it is just moving his hat slightly or taking his hat off, and it's just hilarious.
And again, typical Bill Forsyth, just that 20-second little segment in the middle of the ceilidh or wherever it was in the pub, and you're like, genius, absolute genius, because it's like silly little things like that you remember.
It's like the fishermen there leaning against the boat, and they've all got like holes in the jumpers and all this kind of stuff, and they're having a conversation about the relative virtues of buying a Rolls Royce or a Maserati.
And
about the long-term benefits rather than the immediate benefits of
Yeah, talking about the petrol.
And probably none of them
consumption.
have ever owned a car before or can't even
No.
drive, but they're going to
No.
this is what they're not doing.
It's amazing. Absolute little asides like that make the... I can't imagine we got anybody much past 4 appearances, have we?
No, that was it, yeah.
That is it. Very,
it's the
very
maximum.
thin on the ground. Yeah, so is
So-
this our first Dennis Lawson movie then? It must be.
It is, yeah. And he's not only himself as far as that he'll also be able to tie in
nephew.
between him and his nephew Ewan McGregor. So yeah, so
Peter Capaldi.
Peter Capaldi again we'll see him in something again, I'm sure, but not a terrible lot because
No, I mean we could do the Paddington movie if you wanted to do those, but apart from that and the Doctor Who and the thick of it, and the stuff because he's a lot of TV work with Peter Capaldi.
Yeah.
It may be very few and far between for him, unfortunately,
Yeah.
because we're not going to see a great deal of him. But in this particular movie, I loved it. He was so young in this because you like me, we used to see him in Doctor Who recently, all the thick of, and we're used to older Peter Capaldi now, and we forget that he was doing stuff like this all those years ago, and he's just absolutely fantastic in it. I mean, I like the fact that both him and Peter Riegert, as the days progress, they become less stuffed shirt. They start taking off their suits and they start wearing jumpers, or there's the first scene where they're walking across to the church and they're in their suits and they've got their briefcases. By second day or third day, they're both mixing in with the locals with their shoes off, walking across the sand, and it's completely taken in by the whole almost Brigadoon atmosphere that you mentioned, the Brigadoon aspect.
And you could, despite right at the beginning, they're both on the back of having seen Jenny Seagrove disrobe to go swimming, they're then in the car together saying, what you're thinking about, naked girls, and naked girls in a swimming pool. Yeah. Again, doesn't go down the line that it could do in some other film. That could have been a strong part of the plot. There'd been a romantic rivalry, both of them trying to chase this girl, whereas Peter Capaldi's character obviously does fall in love with her, whereas his who could be his rival ends up falling in love with this community rather than anything else. Although he does have a penchant for the publican's wife. That's more what she represents, I think, than anything else. But yeah, so there's again, that isn't the typical route that could go down. There could have been a love rivalry there, and instead there isn't. They're just doing their own thing and remaining friends, and they're not falling out or anything. Which is, but Peter Capaldi, as you say, absolutely. This is only his first or second role that he actually had.
Yeah, I could believe that.
So
it's 83.
That young. I think there was. Trying to remember, it was before or after this. There was something about him being a musician that comes back to Glasgow after being away. I can't remember now. It's a bit hazy. But that was at the same time as this. But this is very much an early role for him. Something very fresh, and as well as him being fresh faced through youth, I think fresh faced through also being new into professional acting. Look at where he went.
Amazing, yeah. It's that whole generation of Scottish actors, isn't it? You've got your John Gordon Sinclair, your Peter Capaldi, and Craig Ferguson. I was expecting to see him possibly in the band, because didn't they play in a band together, didn't they? Capaldi and Ferguson were both in a band in their teens or whatever, because there's a great episode of the Craig Ferguson show where Capaldi gets up and they jam together, with the guitars. And just quickly going back, I've just noticed you talking about Jenny Seagrove, and then talking about naked women. She's got the web feet, and you likened her to a mermaid.
I think they make her because they're saying about the seals and about how sailors used to think they were, and she goes they were wrong, and there's kind of an implication there as if she's saying I know they're wrong because I am one,
right?
Or something, but.
Did you notice what her character name was?
I didn't, no.
It's Marina.
Oh, Aquamarina, yeah.
She's the mermaid out of Stingray. I just noticed that. I've just looked through on Letterboxd. Now I'm looking to see if there's any relevance to people's names. Felix Happer or something. Does that mean... They named a planet after Felix Happer, apparently.
They did, yes.
A minor planet or a dwar planet or something, I read.
So the character who was wanting a celestial body named after him, that it did actually end up happening in a way.
Imitating art, excellent.
Yeah.
That's great. Let's start winding this up a little bit. I mean, it's very rare that I say that there are such things as a perfect movie, but I cannot fault this at all. I watched this last night for the first time in 40 years, and again, as I said before, I don't know why I haven't watched this before. This is something that I should put on every Christmas because it's just got that gentleness to it, that almost fairy tale like quality. It's totally inoffensive, and it's just something that works. We usually say on a bank holiday or a rainy Sunday afternoon, but it's just one of those 90 minutes, just over 90 minutes, wasn't it? It wasn't that, and it just worked perfectly for me, mate. I couldn't fault the performances. The script writing was absolutely superb. The locations, they made great use of the locations, even though the beach was like nowhere near the actual village. They're two separate locations, but it all managed
to build a cardboard version of the church.
Is that what they did?
Yeah, the church, when they were down on the quayside or down on the beach, and you could see at the end of the beach there was the church on the that was, they had to build that because the actual church that they used is hundreds of miles away because there's so many different locations. So and they just
perfect filmmaking then, because I didn't notice that or know that. So that all just worked. I mean, going back to it for yourself 10, 15 years later, having seen it times, this must still.
Oh, it does, absolutely. And it's very much, like you say, it's one of those sort of gentle, almost meandering plots that you get. There's certain filmmakers that can get away with it. I think it's very difficult for most to do something like this and actually get away with it. And absolutely, Bill Forsyth is one of the ones that this is his thing, and anybody going to see one of his films, this is what they expect. But it is the plot is really, a MacGuffin. Really, the whole thing about it's about the people, and it's there isn't any major incidents in the entire thing. There's not a great piece of peril within the plot. There isn't a great incident of suddenly a turning on its head of some, it's a gentle development of a man from a different world basically coming in and falling in love and realizing that there's a different way, or as far as he's concerned, a better way, and the locals being themselves, and it's gentle and with lots of tiny little comedic witticisms in there. There is these bits, whether it's how to spell dollar on the, whether it's got two L's. Yes, it's got two L's, and bugger off's got two G's, and there's lots of little bits in there that are just comedic aside, that witticisms that if you watch it, in 2 years' time, and I think it's one of those that probably you wouldn't want to necessarily watch every 6 months. You need to have a little bit more separation, but it's got all those little bits in it that the plot being what it is there just stringing together these things, and it's not even like they're major. You do get some films where they've got like it almost is a series of sketches sewn together. And this isn't one of those. This is one that's just it just blends organically as a whole thing, and it's just people living their lives almost. And I think there was pressure on Bill Forsyth to have a bit more of a conclusion to it than maybe he would have had if, and using Burt Lancaster coming in, but it all just works together, and it is heartwarming, and it is just a pleasure to watch, and it certainly isn't a difficult watch, and you end up getting to the end of it just having a warm feeling and just sort of a sigh of going, oh, that was nice.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of giggles in it, and it's all just worked, and as you say, it's worked perfectly. So yeah,
it's the genius of Bill Forsyth, I think, as well as a perfect cast as well. It just all worked together. We've still got a few more Bill Forsyths to see. We haven't seen Comfort and Joy, have we? Seen Comfort and Joy?
No, well, that's kind of seen as being the trilogy almost.
Yeah,
with this and Gregory's Girl. Although at some point we'll have to get to Gregory's Two Girls, won't we?
Well, a long way down the line, apparently. But you've seen it. I've got no intention of watching it at the moment. We will get to it when, if we want to be a completist about this. I've just had a quick look through a random list on Letterboxd of British movies, great British movies, and I had no idea what I was going to bring to the table next, but I've just literally gone, I'm going with that, and I'm not going to change my mind. So let's take a break. We're going to be back with what we're watching next. We're going to go back to the 50s for this one. You know I like a 50s British movie, but it's late 50s, 59. J. Lee Thompson, we're aware of his work. We've seen many of his movies, so he's already inducted in the Hall of Fame as far as this movie. I just sort of said to you off air, going to create a little bit of work for you in regard to the Hall of Fame, because not only is Yvonne Mitchell in it and Megs Jenkins, two of your favourites.
Megs Jenkins.
Yeah. The Marianne Stone, the Duchess, is in it, along with Kenneth Griffith, John Mills. Starring alongside his daughter Hayley, we're going to do Tiger Bay.
Oh, wonderful, yeah.
You've seen it, haven't you? You must have seen that.
Oh, yes, yeah. I mean, it's Talking Pictures TV. At one point, we're showing it like every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But yes, before that, I've seen it, and it is a great film. And yes, I always like to see Meg Jenkins, but it's a great cast anyway. And a great film, so absolutely overdue us getting to this.
I think so. Yeah, let's swap Scotland for Wales in this particular case and give it a go, because I've seen this 2 or 3 times. Probably haven't seen it for about 5 or 6 years. It's a proper Sunday afternoon job, this one.
Yeah, I look forward to doing that. Yeah, always nice to watch it again as well. Because I think I've stayed off watching it since last time I saw it on TV, which was about a year ago, so it's still enough time between the two for me to watch it again. And
brilliant.
So good choice. Fantastic.
Wonderful. Tiger Bay, that's going to be our next one. Okay, all that leaves me to say is to thank Stephen once again for being there today, mate. Thank you for a great choice again. Why you do this every time? You know, why the bloody hell haven't I watched this movie for so long? Thank you once again for Local Hero.
Is that me? I'm a local hero or film?
You are a local hero to me, my friend. Yes. A couple of 100 miles away, but you're still a local hero. That's it from us. Take care, mate. See you soon.
Take care.
It's the end, boys. We've done our duty. We can go now.
Absolute shower. A positive shower.
Bon voyage.
Goodbye!
Good luck.
Thank you.
Keeping the British end up, sir.
I'm sick of brains.
Stop engines.
Stop engines.